If you've spent any time walking through the archives of Europe's wartime past, you'll know that water wasn't just a resource during conflict. It was a lifeline, a source of morale, and often the deciding factor between endurance and collapse. For a moment, set aside the modern convenience of turning a tap. During the World Wars, civilians faced weeks or even months where municipal systems failed. Wells were contaminated and supply lines were smashed by bombardment. Entire communities were forced to rethink water not as an assumed staple, but as a strategic asset. That's where this guide begins. For the next minute or so, stay with me, because we're going to walk through the ingenuity, discipline and improvisation that ordinary citizens across Europe used to survive water scarcity. And more importantly, we'll connect that historical knowledge to practical methods you can use today. This isn't romanticism. It's a blueprint forged under pressure, and it's as relevant now as it was 80 years ago. When water infrastructure collapsed during the bombings of London, Warsaw or Leningrad, civilians quickly learned that the first rule of survival wasn't finding water in the moment. It was building a system that could outlast unpredictability. Historical diaries from the Blitz describe households reusing every available container, from enamel pots to kerosene tins, scrubbed within an inch of their lives. Families turned cellars into storage bays, stacking sealed vessels behind sandbagged walls. The goal was longevity, not convenience. This approach has a direct parallel today. Your storage plan can't rely solely on kitchen jugs or the assumption that municipal supply will return quickly. Adopt the same layered strategy civilians used then, thinking in weeks rather than hours, and structuring your storage around redundancy rather than comfort. During the siege of Sarajevo, the Warsaw Uprising, and countless smaller conflicts, residents had to shift their dependence away from damaged mains toward alternative sources. Europeans often turned to wells, public fountains, rooftop runoff, or even melted snow. But, they didn't trust any source blindly. Families in Belgium, during the First World War, for example, boiled all water drawn from communal wells because of contamination from latrines and all that military traffic. Civilians in Italy during the Second World War filtered river water through layered cloth to remove debris before boiling it, fully aware that clarity didn't necessarily mean purity. Applying this today means, never assuming that an aesthetic clean look makes water safe. Whether you're collecting rainwater from a garage roof or pulling from a nearby borehole, the wartime principle remains the same. Treat everything. Heat is still the oldest and most reliable safeguard, but, modern tools like portable purifiers really mirror the same layered caution civilians practiced under duress. One of the most overlooked wartime tactics was actually the use of micro-storage. In London's East End, where basements were cramped and shelters often overrun, families stored water in narrow glass demijohns tucked into stairwells or small tins concealed under beds. German civilians during the late war rationing converted food cellars into liquid storage zones by elevating containers off the floor to avoid contamination from pests or moisture. This mindset applies seamlessly to modern homes. You don't need a bunker to build a resilient water reserve. you need consistency. A small apartment can hold weeks of supply if you follow the same principles: stackable containers, elevated surfaces, and dispersed storage across different rooms, so a single leak or contamination event doesn't compromise your entire reserve. Wartime Europe teaches that storage is a system, not a single stash. Wartime accounts from Rotterdam, Kiev and Belgrade show that civilians rarely survived water scarcity alone. Neighbours compared boiling times, shared filtering methods, and distributed the labour of hauling from distant pumps. In some towns, families rotated guard duty over communal cisterns to prevent theft or sabotage. This spirit of cooperative resilience isn't outdated. If you apply this today, you're looking at shared rain catch systems between neighbours, coordinated bulk storage, or group investments in purification equipment. The reason this matters is simple. Every historical case study shows that water security increases dramatically with collaboration. Whether you live in a flat block, a suburban neighbourhood, or a rural community, the wartime model proves that collective planning outperforms isolated improvisation. Keeping stored water potable was often harder than obtaining it. Civilians in Norway during the Second World War rotated their supply weekly, pouring old water onto gardens or livestock while refilling containers with freshly boiled batches. Others relied on sealed ceramic vessels that limited exposure to light and pests. Some communities used mild disinfectants, such as diluted bleach, decades before official guidelines existed, simply because local doctors advised it. The takeaway for today is straightforward: stored water must be cycled. Letting it stagnate isn't a backup plan, it's a failure point. Adopting the wartime habit of rotation ensures that even long-term reserves remain usable. If you're storing water at home now, set a schedule, whether weekly or monthly, and stick to it. History is unequivocal on this point. Discipline, not guesswork, keeps reserves safe. If you apply the knowledge from wartime Europe, the path becomes clear. Establish multiple sources, even if your primary one is the tap. Filter and treat everything that isn't municipal. Store in several locations rather than relying on a single container or room. Rotate your supply with regularity. Build at least one shared plan with other people around you. These steps worked under bombing raids, occupation, freezing winters, collapsed sanitation, and resource rationing. They'll work under today's disruptions as well, whether those come from power outages, droughts, or infrastructure failures. The method hasn't changed, because the human need for reliable water hasn't changed. If you found value in this historical deep dive into how civilians stored water during wartime shortages, and how you can too, make sure you subscribe to Warpaths of Europe and share this video with fellow history enthusiasts and preparedness-minded viewers who appreciate knowledge with real weight behind it.